Chapter 118, Continuation. It was Shepherd's Bush Green. At least Remus knew where they were. He consented to rest for only a short while. He was mostly worried that once he'd sat down it would be impossible to get back up. "Then I'll carry you," Sirius said. "Piss off, will you?" Remus snorted, resting his elbows on his knees and leaning forward. He pulled out the compass to check it once more. "Ugh, it's going mental again," he groaned. "I thought I was getting somewhere." "It might be because you're agitated," Sirius suggested, delicately. Because it feeds off your emotions towards the person you're looking for. So maybe if you... "Are you telling me to calm down?" Remus frowned. "It might help," Sirius replied evenly. "How about you tell me something about Grant? Something nice." "If you think it'll help." "But they didn't have time for this. Grant needed him right now." But at this point, Remus was willing to try anything, even if it was just a ploy from Sirius to get more information. His name's Grant Chapman. I met him at St. Edmund's in 1975. He liked the same music as me. He's friendly. What does he look like?" "You've seen him." "Not properly, I was a dog. Anyway, the point is to get you to think about him." "I'm doing nothing but think about him," Remus snapped. He closed his eyes and breathed in. "Fair hair, curls. I think blue eyes. Yeah, blue. He's a crooked front tooth. Last time I saw him he was thinner." A swell of anxiety rose in his throat. He stammered. "Go on," Sirius encouraged. "You like the same music, so Bowie, T-Rex." "Yeah, and he likes Deep Purple." "Cool, okay, so that's how you became friends?" "Yeah," Remus nodded, feeling a bit better, focusing on the positive. "He was the only one at St. Eddie's that wasn't a complete maniac or a criminal. I mean, he had a few charges, but not serious. Then one day he just kissed me, and that's how I knew." Remus glanced at Sirius quickly to check that it was okay to keep going on. Sirius's smile had tightened a bit, but he nodded again. "He's been a good friend, apart from that," Remus explained. "He never makes me feel bad about myself. He never makes me feel odd or different." "He sounds like a really good mate," Sirius said politely. "Yeah, and he'd do anything for me. That's why I need to..." He looked down at the compass and saw that now it was pointing west, a little shaky, but clear enough for Remus. They got up and followed. It was past 7 now. They hadn't eaten since lunch, and the sun was beginning to set. Lily, James and Peter would no doubt be wondering where they were. Sirius didn't complain, just kept quiet and followed while Remus mumbled to himself, following the little golden arrow in his palm and sniffing the thick London air. Shepherd's Bush wasn't much nicer than Mile End, and seemed to have a buzzing nightlife. Pubs and clubs were filling up around them with teens and young people from every subculture, disco kids in bright satin and sequins, grimy skinheads in suspenders and boots, old-school rockers with shaggy hair and punks with studded jackets and faces full of metal. Finally, as they were coming up on Latimer Road, Remus stopped. "There," he said, pointing across the darkening street to a building with blacked-out windows and steps leading down into a basement. Loud music was pounding out onto the street. Whoever the band was, they had little regard for their instruments, and even less for the audience's eardrums. "He's in there," Remus said firmly. The compass confirmed this, pointing straight ahead. The basement looked a bit livelier than Remus was comfortable with. As well as the music, loud shouts and screams were blaring from inside. East End accents, teenage rage. Skinny, yellow-toothed punks stood outside in packs, green spiky hair and heavy bike chains. Remus felt horribly vulnerable in his worn-out brown corduroys and oversized granddad shirt, but Sirius was even more out of place, with his long hippie hair and unmistakably well-bred posture. "Should we go in?" Sirius asked, without a trace of nerves. Remus said, and he was about to suggest that he go in alone, when fate intervened. "Get out, you fucking Nancy boy!" The bouncer was yelling at a young man who was staggering out into the street, head bent, hands in pockets. He had a mess of dirty blonde hair, and a scent that Remus would know anywhere on earth. "Grant!" Remus bolted towards him, running across the road without even looking. Grant didn't hear. He was making his way slowly down the street, hunched over. There was something wrong with the way he was walking. His gait twisted and skewed. He reeked of cheap gin, even standing meters away. The punks were leering at him, yelling vile obscenities to chase him off. Grant turned and sneered back, throwing up 2 fingers and warbling incoherently. "Grant!" Remus said again, catching him up beneath a yellow streetlight. Grant finally stopped and turned, squinting. The wall behind him had been spray-painted with various slogans. "Eat the rich," "Buzz kids and the girl next door don't want to play in your Cold War," "Fuck national service." "Jesus Christ, what are you doing here?" Grant lurched and wobbled, drunk, leaned against the wall and clutched his side, as if something was hurting him there. "Looking for you." Remus walked up to him, trying to see his face, obscured by shadow. "Right, well, obviously, bloody hell. How'd you manage it each time?" Grant shook his head. He didn't look good. He looked dreadful. He was thin, thinner than he should be, thinner than was really healthy. His hair was lank and looked like it hadn't been washed in a while. He had a patchwork of bruises down one side of his face, disappearing under his t-shirt, purple and ugly. "What happened to you?" "Fucking punk happened, didn't it?" Grant laughed, a horrid choking sound, then staggered again and sat on the pavement. "Sorry, mate, a bit dizzy." He retched a few times, but nothing came up, so he spat. Remus squatted beside him, hands trembling. "Who did this? Did it happen in there?" He leaned over, trying to get a proper look at Grant's poor battered face. It was definitely Grant, but he was changed almost beyond recognition. Gone was the bright blue denim and cheeky grin Remus remembered, replaced by torn black drain pipes, haunted eyes, nasty-looking piercings in his nose, eyebrow and lip that were definitely infected. "Get off!" Grant swung out wildly. He wouldn't have hit Remus, and it wouldn't have hurt if he had, but Sirius leapt forward in an instant. "Oi, back off, mate!" Grant blinked and looked up at Sirius, raising a hand to shield his eyes from the brightness of the street lamps. He frowned, then sneered. "And who the fuck are you? Piss off, will ya? I'm talking to my mate." He turned to Remus. "Fancy a pint?" and tried to haul himself back to his feet. Remus helped him, gripping him firmly under the elbow. "I don't think you need any more to drink. How about some dinner?" A flash of sobriety returned to Grant's features. Got cash?" "Yeah, of course." Remus nodded, trying to guide him away from the horrible street they were on. "Come on, I'll buy you dinner. What'd you like?" "Oh, you know me. I'm easy." Grant cackled, leaning heavily against him, but at least allowing himself to be led. Sirius followed, looking very uncomfortable. Grant didn't even notice until they'd reached a cafe somewhere up the road, sobering up a little bit more, and he was still leaning on Remus, and Remus could hear a strange hitch in his breath that told him Grant was in pain. "In here?" Remus turned to Sirius, questioning. Sirius glanced at the illuminated window, the cheap plastic chairs inside, with a faint look of disdain, but shrugged. "Probably the best we'll find around here." "You again," Grant grumbled. Thought I told you to naff off. Grant, Remus said gently. This is Sirius, my friend from school. Grant did a double take, narrowing his eyes, or eye anyway. Only one of them opened properly. Oh, fuck me, he murmured, still swaying. Proper stunner. Sirius looked embarrassed, so Remus herded Grant into the cafe to sit down, ordering 3 cups of tea and a pie and chips, chicken and mushroom. I don't want no trouble from you, the burly man behind the counter said as he set the mugs of greyish tea down. I know your types. Piss off, you dirty old man, Grant slurred. Bet you'd pay for it if you could. What did I say? Look, Remus stood up quickly. He's sobering up. I'll keep him quiet, I swear. I'll pay up front. It'll be okay once he's eaten. The large man looked at him appraisingly. His eyes flicked to Sirius, still seated, then Grant, then back to Remus. So are you? Christian outreach? Sort of. Remus nodded, trying to look religious, whatever religious looked like. Anyway, it satisfied the cafe owner, who lumbered back behind his counter, presumably to heat up their food. Cool, Grant laughed into his tea. Yep, possibly the bloody year, Remus. Just, please stop trying to fight with everyone for 5 minutes, will you? Grant blew a raspberry, then giggled. When their food arrived, Grant tucked into it as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. Remus hoped that wasn't true, but judging by the state of his bony frame, things didn't look good. The pie and chips were demolished in minutes, and Remus ordered a Bakewell tart for afters, as well as some more tea. Where are you living? He asked, hoping he sounded kind and not accusatory. What were you doing in that club? Getting bladdered, Grant murmured. He was calmer now he'd eaten, slower and more pliant. Well, you've achieved that. The bruises. Grant looked up, suddenly, right at Remus. He was stone-cold sober, his eyes sharp and wide, as if Remus's face was a mirror, and he was seeing himself for the first time. He touched his grubby fingers to the marred side of his cheek. Got into an altercation a few days ago, he said. But fuck it, I'm off tomorrow, going down to Brighton. Sick of bloody London. Sick of bloody miserable fucking London. Everyone wants to get at you. Do you over. Any way they can. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, Remus breathed. He felt so helpless. He wanted to look for Sirius for reassurance, but it seemed somehow disrespectful to Grant. How's school, Poshnell? Grant asked, slurping his tea like a builder. Oh, you know, fine. What's in Brighton? Somewhere to live? A job? How are you getting there? Got friends, Grant shrugged, then winced. He'd broken a rib, Remus realised, and scolded himself for not having noticed earlier. Do you need to go to hospital? How long have you been like this? No hospital, Grant grumbled, curling up in his seat protectively. They think I'm a skankhead. Probably look like one, do I? I went to Mile End. I saw ads. That cunt, he can fuck a ride off and all. Look, lend me a tenner, will ya? I'm good for it. Give me your address and I'll pay you back. Not if you're just going to get drunk on it. Mr. High and Mighty, I'll have you know, I deserve a good drink. I've had my heart broken. You remember what it's like. He gave Sirius a less than subtle glare. Sirius, to his credit, did not react, but stared at the sugar bowl. Someone had put their cigarette out in it. I'm really sorry, Grant, Remus said sincerely. Look, where are you sleeping at the moment? Up the road. Is it safe there? I lost my key. Well, Remus thought to himself, At least there's a lock. He'd been halfway to deciding to smuggle Grant back to Diagon Alley and just facing the consequences when they got caught. They ordered more tea and Grant ate some more. Once he'd finished, he had grown agreeably soft and sleepy, drunk on a full stomach. Sirius and Remus helped him back to his room in an old Edwardian terrace which looked as though it had been abandoned for years. Still, inside was busy and homelier than the condemned Mile End building. A young woman peered out of the next room along, mousy, freckled face, at odds with her grunge-green mohawk. "Grant? God, you're pissed again. I told you vodka's not a fucking painkiller. Go to a bloody doctor." She looked up at Remus. "Who are you?" "A friend. I'm just trying to make sure he's okay." "He'll be fine, he gets like this." Sirius performed a silent unlocking charm on Grant's door, and Remus half carried Grant inside, settling him in as carefully as he could onto the single mattress on the floor. It was a small room, with one tiny round window, unfurnished. There was a stack of magazines in one corner, and a lamp perched on top, a rucksack stuffed with clothes, a mirror which was rusting around the edges, and what looked like a small washing station, a bar of soap, a toothbrush, and an empty bowl. Grant curled up on the mattress and began to snore softly. Remus knelt beside him, frowning. The punk girl stood in the doorway, arms folded, looking Sirius up and down. "He said he was going to Brighton tomorrow," Remus said to her. "Is that true?" "If he got the money together for his fare train," she shrugged. "Said he got nicked last week. He was seeing this really rough type. Treated him like shit, poor love." "He'll have the money," Remus said firmly. "Will you make sure he goes? It will be safe." "Not his keeper," she shrugged, backing out. "Got enough problems." "Charming," Sirius said, with a raised eyebrow, as she vanished back into her room. "Shut the door," Remus said, pulling out his wand. He wanted to fix as much as he could while Grant was still sleeping. He ran through his list of healing spells. He'd only done them on himself so far, but nothing had gone very badly wrong. "What the hell are you doing?" Sirius came over, as Remus aimed his wand at Grant's chest. "What about the Statute of Secrecy?" "Bugger that," Remus grunted. "Can't just leave him like this." Sirius stepped back and watched as Remus did his best to heal Grant's ribs, then clear up the bruises and blackened eye. Afterwards, he leaned back, mind racing. He turned to Sirius. "Right, I think I need to stay here tonight," he said. "I could leave him some money, but I think it's best if I make sure he gets to Brighton tomorrow, if that's still what he wants to do, when he's sober." "Right," Sirius nodded. "We've got to get to King's Cross, though." "Yeah, I'll be on time. I can just apparate from Victoria." "Okay." Sirius nodded again. He sat down, leaning against the opposite wall. He took off his jacket and folded it underneath him. "What are you doing?" Remus asked. "You need to go back to Diagon Alley." "No, I don't," Sirius shrugged. "I can stay." "But James..." "Oh, right, yeah. Hang on." Sirius reached into his pocket and pulled out the compact mirror. Remus gazed at it enviously. He wished he had one. He'd give it to Grant and never lose him again. "Oi, Potter, you there? Prongs?" Sirius was speaking into the device. "Hiya, look, me and Mooney are going to a gig here. We'll be in late. Don't tell anyone, okay? See you tomorrow." "Yeah." "Yeah." "No, I promise." "Okay, cheers." He snapped it closed and looked at Remus. "There, done." "You didn't have to do that. If you're worried about leaving me here with him, I'm really just making sure he's okay." "And I'm making sure you're okay, Remus," Sirius replied coolly. "I'm not leaving you to spend all night alone in this place. Come on, let's get comfortable. Plenty of floor to go around." Remus's guilt soared even higher then, as Sirius gave him a bright grin and extended an arm towards him, His last night before school, spent on the floor of some muggle halfway house, and he wasn't even complaining about it. Remus sat down too, and slouched down to settle under Sirius's arm. At least they were together now. Sirius kissed his head, and they both watched Grant sleeping like a child. "I'm sorry," Remus said, exhausted. "He's not... I don't want you to think this is how he usually acts. He's obviously had a bad time." "What happened to him?" Sirius asked, very quietly. "What happened to make him end up in here, like this?" "He got kicked out of St. Edmund's 2 years ago." Remus yawned, his eyes growing heavy. "Didn't have anywhere else to go. Can't get a job because he didn't do his exams in school, and I'm guessing he hasn't got a proper address." "Remus?" "Mm-hmm." "This wouldn't happen to you, would it? Because you've got us." "Yeah," he murmured sleepily, only half paying attention. "I've got you, Padfoot. Don't worry about me." Chapter 119, 7th year, back to school. For a horrible moment, just as he woke up, Remus forgot where he was. He took in the stuffy air, the faint whiff of rotten newspaper, body odour and urine. He took in the hard floor, which had exacerbated his various aches and pains overnight. Then he opened his eyes and saw Grant lying on the mattress opposite, staring back at him. He looked a bit better. "Morning," Grant mouthed. "Morning," Remus replied, moving against Sirius, who was still fast asleep, head back against the wall. He peeled himself away carefully and whispered to Grant, "Don't worry, he sleeps like the dead. I'll wake him up in a bit." "I can't remember much," Grant whispered, lying on his side, head resting on a pillow which looked dirty and stained. "Sorry if I was a knob. I think I'm a bit of a knob these days." "You were fine," Remus shook his head. "Just sad, maybe." Grant looked stricken, so Remus moved to get up. "Lou?" he asked. "Downstairs, I'll show you." Grant pulled himself up gingerly, then looked amazed. "Blimey," he said, patting his side. "Must have been a bruise after all. Knew I didn't need no doctor." Remus pursed his lips and followed Grant out. Downstairs was already alive with activity, despite the early hour. The house seemed to be a kind of commune, full of all kinds of different people. There was an outhouse in the back garden, more like a yard that had been turned into an allotment, with an outdoor shower, which Remus couldn't imagine was much fun in the winter. Still, the people were friendly and all said hello to the two boys as they passed, which Remus remarked upon. "Everyone seems nice." "They're all right," Grant replied from inside the loo. "Only been here a few days, leaving as soon as I can." "For Brighton? You mentioned last night." "Oh, did I? Well, that was the plan." Grant came out of the outhouse looking sheepish. "Maybe next month, though." "Was there? Friends?" Grant nodded. "Yeah, one of the nicer lads from the Mile End place. Got a cousin there too, the last Chapman who don't hate me. She owns a pub, and she'd said she'd hire me if I get my shit together and pay the train fare." He sighed heavily, washing his hands, then face, in a bucket of water taken down from a big green water butt standing by the back door. "Supposed to prove myself." "That doesn't seem very..." What did Remus want to say? Kind? Family-like? Grant had clearly experienced very little of either. "Nah, she's fair enough," Grant replied, feeling in his pockets and coming up empty. Remus handed him over his own tin of roll-ups and the lighter. Grant nodded appreciatively, and continued explaining as he lit up. "I've let her down a few times before, mostly if Grandad was involved. You know I can't stick him." Remus nodded, trying to be understanding. Grant had a huge family, Irish Catholic, he'd once said, but relations between them was often fraught, particularly where his patriarchal grandfather was concerned. "Don't get me wrong," Grant was saying. I really was going this time. I was. But it just turned out wrong again. A lot's turned out wrong, to be honest. Remus wanted to hug him, but he looked so thin, so wiry and prickly, it made him too afraid. "How much is it?" he asked, digging into his pockets. "I got a bit of money, left by my dad. You can have the fare. I'll take you to the station today." "Couldn't do that." Grant held up his hands. "Not to keep, obviously," Remus said quickly. "You'd owe me. Look, I've got one more year of school, then I'll come and find you. And you'll have been working in your cousin's pub, right? So you can pay me back. How much? £10?" £4, Grant sighed. "I had £4 last week too, but I lost it. I didn't drink it, promise." £4? I can lend you that. That's fine." "Are you serious?" Grant stared at him, blinking. "Course." Remus nodded, frowning slightly. "Why not? You'd do the same for me." Grant shook his head, then pressed the heel of his hand into one eye, as if overcome with emotion. "Thanks, Remus. You're such a good mate." "You'd do the same for me," Remus repeated. It occurred to him for the first time that he and Grant were actually the same age. Grant had always been so knowing, so streetwise and protective, that Remus had considered him older, more mature. But he was only 17, and life had been as cruel to Grant as it had been to Remus, perhaps even more cruel, because, after all, Remus knew in his heart that he would never be homeless. He could never be alone while the marauders were there. He needed to learn to stop putting people on pedestals, stop expecting so much of everybody. He stepped forward then and hugged the other boy, minding not to burn himself on the cigarette. "When'd you get so tall anyway?" Grant laughed, muffled under Remus's arm. "Don't," Remus chuckled, pulling back. "Sirius teases me all the time." "Sirius?" Grant shook his head in amazement. "Sirius and Remus. Bloody hell. Is it him? The posh lad? What broke your heart?" Yeah. It's okay now, though." "I hope so, Remus, mate." There was time for Grant to pack his meagre possessions, and for Sirius and Grant to take him for breakfast to the small cafe in Victoria Station. "You're going to make me fat," he said to Remus as he scoffed down his second bacon butty. "No chance," Remus said, prodding him in the ribs. Sirius had been quiet all morning, but then he never did function well on a poor night's sleep. He looked only slightly rumpled, his hair a little less lustrous than usual, his eyes a bit foggy. Remus could tell that he was still fascinated by the sights and sounds of Muggle London, only of course he couldn't explain that to Grant. Grant regarded Sirius with a similar wariness. He apologised for his behaviour the night before, and tried to explain that they'd caught him on a bad night. He seemed meeker in front of Sirius, less cheeky, perhaps perceiving him as a social superior, and therefore mildly dangerous. Remus well remembered how alien Potter and Black had been to him once upon a time. "You two got a train to catch, yeah?" Grant said, eyes flicking to Sirius, then Remus, then back again. "Yeah, but we've got time," Remus said. "Here, I want to give you this." He handed Grant a scrap of paper which had the Potter's address on it. "It's where I'm living when I'm not at school. Will you send me a letter when you're settled? A postcard? Promise?" "Yeah, 'kay." Grant nodded, tucking it away. "Warning you, my handwriting's shit and I can't spell for toffee." "I don't care about that. I just want to know where you are next time. Do you need stamps?" "Oh, I should have bought stamps." "I can get stamps." Grant touched his arm. "You've done enough. Honest." They hugged again on the platform. Grant shook Sirius's hand, which was weird, but polite of him. "I'll come and visit. At Christmas, maybe. Or Next summer, Remus said. Bloody well believe you two. Can't get rid of you, can I? Grant grinned. His first genuine smile so far. It made Remus feel somewhat easier. Like magnets, you and me, yeah? Always snap right back together. This hit Remus in such a way that he had to hug Grant again until the other boy laughed and pushed him away. All right, I've got a train to catch, you know. And of course, so did Remus and Sirius. As soon as Grant had disappeared through the train doors, they bolted towards the gentlemen's toilets to apparate to King's Cross. Inside the cubicle, Sirius finally spoke. He touched Remus's arm, where Grant had only minutes before. You look exhausted. Let me do it. You can side along. Really? Remus could have said he was no more tired than Sirius, who had put up with just as much as he had. But that would have been a lie. He was too tired to argue even. Really? Sirius nodded, taking his arm. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for helping him. Don't be silly. Sirius gave him a small smile. He obviously loves you. But Remus had no chance to finish his thought. He was spinning through space, noise and colour blurring, as he and Sirius left Victoria and landed fairly gracefully just outside King's Cross. They had no choice but to run for the platform, and found James hanging out of the train door, waving frantically. Fucking hell, where have you two been? Language! Lily's face poked out of the next window along. You're a head boy now. You should be setting an example. I am setting an example, telling these wankers off, he retorted as Sirius and Remus clambered onto the train just as the guard blew the whistle. Language, Lily said again. Honestly, James, you really need to start growing up this year. You're of age. You really need to start acting. Isn't she brilliant? James beamed at Remus, who was now sitting on the floor of the carriage, catching his breath. Sirius was bent over, hands on his knees, looking shockingly unserious, red in the face, hair everywhere. James regarded them both, folding his arms, gold head boy and Quidditch captain badges glinting on his dark robes. So where were you? Told you, gig, Sirius huffed. Which band? Don't know, the Muggle band. Why didn't you come back last night? Where did you sleep? Sirius flashed a nervous look at Remus, and Remus could tell he was on the verge of spilling everything. He stood up quickly. We didn't sleep. It went all night. We had breakfast and then came straight here. Sirius stared at him in amazement before nodding along. James shook his head. Mental. And dangerous. Seriously, lads, don't do that again. Won't, Sirius murmured, looking at his feet. Lily appeared in the corridor, hands on her hips, looking beautiful and terrifying. Potter, she said, we've got to lead the meeting. Right you are, James grinned, forgetting all about his two out-of-breath friends, following the redhead away towards the prefect's carriage. See you later, boys, he called absent-mindedly. You're a really good liar, Sirius said to Remus. Maybe it was the lack of sleep, or the pain in his hip, but this statement rubbed Remus the wrong way. What's that supposed to mean? He snapped. Nothing. Sirius looked down. Come on, let's find Pete. Peter was sitting with Mary, Marlene and Dorcas in the carriage that Lily had just exited. He looked a bit outnumbered as the girls were swapping tips for fingernail strengthening charms. We thought you'd missed the train, Marlene said as Remus and Sirius entered. You know me, McKinnon? Sirius gave his most charming grin. Like to make an entrance. Now you're dragging poor Remus down with you, Mary laughed. Come and sit here, Lupin. I'll protect you from that delinquent. She budged up in her seat to make room by the window. Remus took the space gratefully. Where were you? Peter asked. You left me all alone with Lily and James. I might as well have been a ghost. Gig, stayed out late, didn't sleep. Sirius waved a hand, yawning. He sat opposite Remus and folded his arms, leaning tiredly against the window. The train began to move, and Remus closed his eyes because he was exhausted, but also because, that way, he didn't have to answer any more questions about where they'd been. The girls began to speak more quietly, and eventually he drifted to sleep. When he woke up, they were already in Scotland, the dark rolling hills whooshing past, a smattering of rain hitting the windows. Sirius was curled up on the seat opposite him, completely hidden under everyone else's cloaks. Remus could hear him breathing evenly, fast asleep. Mary was sliding the door open as Remus stretched, waving at her sleepily. She smiled and waved back, but looked serious. Marlene frowned. "What's up?" "I just saw Lily," Mary whispered. "Something happened in the prefect's carriage." She glanced over at Sirius, still just a lump underneath the cloaks, and lowered her voice even further, so that Remus and Mary had to lean in. "James and Regulus got into a fight. They're both okay, but it got quite nasty by the sounds of it. Regulus was saying some really crazy stuff. Lily was very shaken." "He's one of them," Marlene whispered, looking anxious. "The Black family are you-know-who's strongest supporters. Everyone knows it." "Shh," Remus said quickly. "We don't know what it was about. Could be anything." The girls fell quiet after that, but exchanged concerned looks with each other, and Remus could tell they thought he was being naive. He leaned back and looked out of the window for a while, listening to Sirius's relaxed heartbeat and worrying about Grant, and wishing more than anything that the worst was already behind them. End of chapter 119.